Welcome to All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Okay, Angie, imagine this. You're raising your only child. We'll say
just
Xander.
one?
Yeah, just Xander.
Just
on
one.
A piece of ice, knowing that if it breaks too soon, they won't survive. And I mean, that's the reality for emperor penguins today. This largest penguin on Earth that's, built, we know, and we're going to talk about today, how they survive in minus 60 degrees.
It's crazy.
Hurricane force winds, months without food. I mean, true survivors. And this male balancing this egg on their feet through the winter.
We're talking about a super dad as we get ready for Father's Day. Yes.
Yeah, but sadly, something's changed. I mean, in recent years, and this is why we're covering them again, complete colonies of emperor penguin chicks have collapsed. And it's not predators, it's not disease, it's because the ice beneath them just disappears. And now the emperor penguin's listed as endangered.
Right. Yes.
It's alarming. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Near threatened in 2019. And then 6-7 years later, just this past April, endangered in 2026. And as we are around our Earth Day, so Wednesday, April 22nd, which is when we're recording this, of course, it probably won't come on air for another week or so, but we'll call it Earth Month. For 2026, which is the 56th anniversary of Earth Day, the theme is Our Power, Our Planet. And I just think that the emperor penguin is sending us a message that we need to work harder, that we all collectively need to work harder. And this bird is so cool. It lives further south than any other penguin species. And as Chris already mentioned, emperor penguins are the only ones that breed on ice, and they incubate their egg through the polar winter, which is insane to me. My children now, if they go outside and it's 50, they think they're 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. They think that they're from Florida, so they're a little ridiculous. But I just can't even imagine that. And they're doing it, and they've been doing it for millions of years, perfecting it. And we're going to talk all about their unique physiology to be able to do this and live in these harsh climates, which is just so cool and so fascinating. And they are in big, big trouble.
Yeah.
So, here in, of course, North America or the Northern Hemisphere, we're actually moving into our summer. But for all of our friends in the Southern Hemisphere, you are moving into your winter. The emperor penguin, it's so darn cute. It fits in wherever, and we need to sound the alarm bells, I think.
Yeah.
And yes, and you need to sound the alarm bells and tell your friends, and we'll describe what they look like, but oh my gosh, they're just a beautiful bird, and the chicks are darling, and there's been documentaries about them for the BBC through Nat Geo. I mean, they're a beloved creature.
Yeah, they definitely are one of the most iconic penguin species. It's the data that we're going to go over a little bit today. Is scientists are estimating by the end of this century, 90% of the emperor penguin colonies will be completely collapsed and gone. So we'll have a massive decline in the biomass of emperor penguins in our southern oceans. And like Angie said, this is the defining moment. This year is the defining year. So our narrative on this podcast, Angie and I together, is we're done arguing. We're witnessing this collapse in real time. It's what do we do about it? So you're going to notice a change in the tone in our podcast. We're going to start bringing you solutions. We're going to bring on guests that are discussing solutions, because we need to collectively come together and stand up and demand better from all of our governments, because it's not just where Angie's at, the USA, and it's not just here in New Zealand. It's across the ditch in Australia. Governments around the world are, chipping away at some of these protections, and where other governments are screaming for more. So just stay tuned for that in the coming months as we go over some of these species. But Angie, the emperor penguin, we first did cover them back in 2018, and it was my mic was really hot in that episode, so we've never re-released that one. No, this is an update on it, and we wanted to highlight them, especially with this alarming news from the IUCN. So to kick it off, I mean, describe an emperor penguin. I think most people know what it looks like, but
Yes. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, the adult emperor, we'll start with them. The chicks, they're both, well, the adults are beautiful. The chicks are just darling. But the adult emperor penguin, they have black backs and white chests, if you think of the typical penguin. And then they do have patches of orange and yellow on their heads, ears, and upper chests, which will kind of fade into the white of their chest. They have a long black beak with pink to orange stripes along the lower mandible. And their wings, of course, are penguin wing-like, where they're stiff and they're long. And they have a wingspan of about 32 inches or 80 centimeters. So beautiful, beautiful big penguin. We'll get to sizes here in a second. But the chicks are, they're just, if you're not familiar with an emperor penguin chick or the March of the Penguins or anything like that, you have to do yourself a favor and either check out our show notes or just Google it, look at the images, because emperor penguin hatchlings have basically gray skin, no feathers. And when they're really little, when they're first born, they weigh about 0.7 pounds or 315 grams. So they're pretty small. But over the next couple weeks is when they get this iconic gray bluish feathers that are super down-like, and they begin to grow and they just look like big fluff balls. And of course, over time, they grow into looking like the adult. But when they're these little gray fluff ball, blue-gray fluff balls, they're just, I mean, they're just the most darling thing you've ever seen. And of course, there's colonies of them, and we'll talk about that when we get to social behavior. So they're all together, they're all kind of grouped together, being raised, and they're incredible. So
Yeah, there's. I mean, March of the Penguins. That's an iconic film, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it because it's incredible what these animals do in the most extreme environment on the planet, next to like the deep deserts. Just yeah, Antarctica, and they survive, but they're not thriving anymore. Okay, sizes. Average penguin stands 30 inches tall, 75 centimeters. The emperor is the largest penguin on Earth. They stand upwards of close to 48 inches tall, almost 4 feet.
that's like my kid,
So,
man.
yes, yeah, probably a
Yeah.
little bit. Maddox is probably about that tall now. But
Yeah.
yeah, 1.2 meters
I
tall,
can just
and
see
they
him
can weigh
walking.
up to 100 pounds. Like the bales, yeah, 100
That's
pounds.
way more than Maddox. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible. It's
yeah,
a big bird.
45 kilograms. Now, do you remember the smallest penguin in the world? We did cover them.
Oh, is it the, hold on. Is it the blue one?
Yes. Yeah. Little
Okay.
blue. The little blue.
Yeah. It's in the
Yay.
name.
Fairy penguin, little blue. Yeah.
I had to go deep in the crevices for that one, but
Yes. Yes. And I have seen them in the wild. They're on
I
my
was going to
bird
say that's
list.
by you.
This, oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. The only penguin I've seen in the wild is the little blues. They stand about 12 inches,
Oh,
30 centimeters.
yeah.
So, yeah, they're tiny. They weigh
Cute.
like 3 pounds. So, really, really tired, 1.5 kilograms. So, wide range, but, the emperors are just huge. Now, the range is Antarctica. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the range in the colonies. But, Angie, it was funny. A couple years ago, in November 2024, emperor penguin showed up on the south coast of Australia.
Oh my.
So in Western Australia, and I messaged Jesse. I'm like, okay, how fast can we get on a flight and get there and see this penguin and mark him on our bird list? Because it was way,
You nerds. I
way,
love it. Bird
yes,
nerds. I
yeah,
love it. I
yes.
love it.
But no, they named him Gus. He was so far from home. I mean,
Yeah.
over 2,000 miles or 3,500 kilometers from where he should have been. He was malnourished because he was so far north, but they did bring him in under human care, got him back up to where he needed to be, and then they re-released him in the wild. There have been a couple emperor penguins over the decades that have shown up in New Zealand. but that's not normal. I mean, they're normally not up here. I mean, they're built for Antarctica, and the sea ice that they depend on, and all the surrounding area, the krill, the fish, everything they eat is around there. So when we look at the colonies of emperor penguins
Hmm.
all around Antarctica, and there is a projection map from the whole Oceanographic Institution showing projections over the next 60, 70 years. And when I look at this map with the current projections of climate change, the warming of the earth, and the loss of the sea ice, you can see where 80 to 90% of these colonies completely collapse
Yeah.
around all the edges. Because on the landmass of Antarctica, you have these shelves of ice that go way out into the ocean. Like the Arctic is just sea ice, right? There's no land up there, and we know that's shrinking every year. Well, like glaciers that we have on our lands, this sea ice is retreating, retreating, retreating. Some of these big shelves actually are probably going to collapse into the ocean. And this is where the emperor penguins breed.
Yeah.
This is
Where they
all
live.
they know. This is
Hmm.
where they remember,
Yeah.
like we talk about green sea turtles, or most sea turtles going back to their nesting areas, birds that migrate around the planet,
Yeah.
albatross come back to the shores of New Zealand and the
Yeah.
subantarctic islands to the exact same spots where they were born. So these are the only shelves of ice these penguins know. And
Hmm.
when they go and it's gone, or they're the real alarming thing is they do freeze back over, the emperor penguins get on these shelves, lay their eggs, start raising these chicks, but it's warming earlier. And like I opened this podcast with, the ice suddenly melts and the chicks drown. And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And we're losing entire colonies now. That's the tragic reality of what's going on. And this is the tragic reality of climate change. So what are we going to do about it, right? Like that's the fire in our bellies. Like
Yes.
this is where all of us listening need to go, okay,
Okay.
we are witnessing this and we can't be apathetic anymore, and we need
Yeah.
to do something about it.
I mean, we're talking about my kids, my grandkids, them being wiped out in their lifetime.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, 10% left, and then fragmented populations. I mean, Antarctica is massive. I think I have a statistic in here. It's like the size of North America, the range of emperor
yeah.
penguins. And when you're talking maybe get down to a few thousand, that's not sustainable. They will go
Right.
extinct over the long term.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it leads into the importance of emperor penguins, because scientists call them sentinel species. And that means it's a species they monitor to check the biome's health, the environmental health of the
Right.
ecosystem. And we know emperor penguins depend on stable sea ice and reliable food like krill. And we know we're now fishing krill right from the mouths of the penguins. So, yeah, Angie, I mean, as a sentinel species, what are they doing for these ecosystems, and why are they so important to Antarctica?
Well, to play off your krill in the food web, the emperor penguin plays a huge role, right? So they eat fish and they eat squid. And then, as sad as it sounds, they do serve as a prey animal for predators like leopard seals. Okay. We saw some really amazing orca and was it leopard seal footage for Bertie Gregory and his crew when
The
they were.
crab eaters and the Weddell
Mm-hmm,
seals and the leopard
mm-hmm,
seals. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yep, yep.
And so they do play a role in as far as being food, and that's when there's more than enough of them, that's a perfect role for them, especially if they're older and slower and things like that. So they really do help support the Antarctic ecosystem from bottom to top. And the other thing too is everybody knows a penguin. It doesn't matter who's listening to this podcast, you have a visual of what it looks like. An average penguin, maybe not an emperor per se, but they're just such an iconic species. It's a powerful symbol. It moves people. Like I said, movies like March of the Penguins and just getting people understanding that they have this extraordinary breeding strategy, which we'll talk more about when we get into in behavior and reproduction. But how they raise their chicks, when they raise their chicks, it's just a remarkable example of these physiological and behavioral adaptations that are just heroic. And people want to hear their story. People want to see them on film. People want to learn more about them. People want to save them. And I think that they're also an example of the power of social behavior. So we opened with talking about, well, with climate change and with the emperor penguins being listed now as endangered. Well, what can we do as a society when it feels overwhelming and there's often doom and gloom? This is not a good situation for the emperor penguins or us humans to be in. But if we come together the way that the penguins do, they do this really cool like huddling behavior to help basically stay warm and thermoregulate. And it's called basically a cooperative survival under extreme conditions. I feel like that's what we need to do to help battle some of this climate change and get some of our populations back and thriving. So I just think that, as Chris said, as an indicator, climate change indicator species or sentinel species, that type of thing, they're sounding the alarm bells, and we need to listen, and we need to share, and we need to care, and we need to take action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think, and then I think throwing interest, money, time, energy, effort, education into helping save the emperor penguin and helping move the needle on climate change is basically going to protect the whole ecosystem, right? What was always save a tiger, save ourselves. I
Mm-hmm.
think we can move this to our Antarctic friends, save an emperor penguin, save ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, Sonarto. I
Yeah.
still remember that quote. I still
Yeah.
remember that quote.
Mhm.
And Secrets of the Penguins, Nat Geo, Dr. Pablo. I remember Bertie Gregory didn't come on the podcast to talk about that one. It was Dr. Pablo
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for
Borgloo.
the
I
correction.
said his
Yeah.
name. No. But Bertie was in it. Like Bertie led it.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I have a little conservation crush, so I like to bring him up whenever, whenever I can.
you're gonna elbow me out the next time he comes on the podcast because
Probably.
yeah. But they were still learning. We're still learning so much about emperor penguin behavior and survival. So there's still a lot to do. And, thinking about solutions, one thing I'll just throw out there now is don't ever buy krill oil for anything. Period. End of
Don't need
story.
it.
That
Yeah.
industry needs to die. I'm sorry. It does. We did an
Well,
episode
Chris
on
and I
krill months
study
ago.
omega-3s and
Yes.
for nutrition purposes for some horses and other animals, and you can get it from algae. You do not
Yes.
need to get it from krill, especially not
Krill.
from krill.
Yeah.
Or if you're a human, just eat salmon. Like eat you don't need a supplement. Like that's the supplement industry drives me bonkers. I'm like, well, if we just actually ate a whole food diet, we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't need all that stuff. So
Yeah, and there is some plant-based solutions with these
yes,
supplements and things. But
absolutely.
yeah, I just avoid krill. I see it on the shelves here in New Zealand, and I cringe. And I definitely tell Pippa, never buy this. Now, major threats to penguins. We talked about climate change. The other one's bird flu.
Yeah.
Their climate change is changing where krill live. It's shifting them. And that goes back to African penguin when we talked about many years ago, where they used to go, I think it was 20 to 30 kilometers off the coast of South Africa to forage,
Right.
then get back and feed their chicks. Because of the current shifting due to climate change, that's now 50, 60, 70 kilometers off the coast of South Africa. These African penguins have to decide, do I starve to death or do I try to go and catch fish where the fish are
right
off the coast and hopefully my chick doesn't die by the time I get back? Those are the choices these animals are forced to make. And so The shifting sea ice, reduction in sea ice, which the last 10 years has accelerated in Antarctica. It's gotten worse, obviously, and that drove the upgrade to, I don't know, do you call it downgrade or upgrade? They got shifted from near
No,
threatened.
that's why I said shifted. I'm like, I think it's upgraded, but that sounds positive,
It's not
so
positive.
it's
It's
not
not.
positive. I'm just going to say
No.
shifted in the worst
Yeah.
direction. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Shifted from near threatened to endangered. But bird flu, okay, is going around the planet.
Yeah.
And because these emperor penguins are in dense colonies, they're in very tight groups,
Close together.
and avian flu could wipe them out. And they're already detecting some avian flu in these subantarctic islands, like south of me. They're detecting them in skuas, which I hope to see. Petrels, I've seen. Very, very large birds. I mean, even think
Yeah.
albatross. I mean, uh, so bird flu, as the Earth is warming quickly, it is it is being found further south, creeping closer to the emperor penguins. Now, when we talk about the sea ice, again with climate change, it's happening so rapidly that they can't adjust. If the Earth was going through a normal warming period, which it does, we do recognize that in science, that there's freezing periods and warming periods that take hundreds and thousands of years to happen, like the end of the ice age. Yeah, it didn't just collapse in 100 years like we're seeing now. It took a few thousand years for the Earth to warm enough that it expanded ecosystems and changed the planet. What's going on here in the last 100 years is the Earth is warming faster and faster and faster. And so the emperor penguins don't have time to adjust. They don't have time to go, oh, well, this collapsed last year, so let's go a little bit further. I mean, they don't have the ability to think that deeply and lay our eggs, back farther. So if the ice collapses this year, at least we're safe. They can't think like that. They go, oh, we could jump on the ice. I kind of remember where I'm going, and I go for so many kilometers or miles. Boom, we're here. This is where we nest. And then by springtime, the ice is gone and the chicks are gone. So that is what's going on. And the climate's only getting worse. This year is predicted to have an extreme El Nino in the
Yeah.
southern Pacific Ocean. We're preparing it here in New Zealand. I mean, in our news just this week, every 8 days, we are getting hit with superstorms. Every 8 days. This is not normal. We
Right.
have
Well, you and I were
slips and
talking
slides.
before
Yeah.
we got on air.
Yeah.
You're in this like huge superstorm rain type of flooding events. And over here in Florida, so subtropical, known for it to be pretty rainy, we are in a drought, which is not unheard of for this time of year before our rains start. But there are wildfires in Florida all over the place now. There's one 5 miles from my house that I was monitoring, and the air quality was bad. And it's just like I've been here for 15 years. There's
Yeah. Never
never
been a
been
fire.
any, nah, not in my area, not like
Mm-mm.
changing the air quality, and not so many of them, and not probably in April. So it's just the climate is
It's
changing.
it's not normal. That's a
It's not
swamp. The swamps,
normal. It's
when
and
the
it's not a
swamp's
like
on fire,
right, the
there's a
swamp.
problem. Yeah. It's on
So
fire.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's a problem. And also too, like you said, there's geological weather patterns over like hundreds of thousands of years. Climate does change. This is man-made, accelerated in the past 100 years. That is the difference. And it does not give these
Yeah.
animals
Time to
time
adjust.
to adapt from an evolutionary point of view. And when they look at genetic studies from emperor penguins, they suggest at this point that their cold adaptation, which is what we're going to talk about, because it's amazing what they do. But that it's more of a derived trait, meaning that it did probably evolve as after rather than being like a trait that then they like moved. So probably like living there and the ones that could live there better and deal with the cold and then breed and all of that meant that they lived and they passed on those genes. So could they do that again for now warmer weather?
If
Maybe
they
if
had
they had another
time.
100,000 however, I'm
Yeah.
just making up numbers because
Yeah.
but not at the clip that we're going. Not the way
No.
the
No.
sea ice shelves are just crumbling into the ocean.
Yeah. 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 So a little bit of hope. I mean, or how do we reverse this trend? And it comes down to slowing climate change. For you, the listener, because you do matter. I made that clear in the previous podcast, and what you do matters because collectively what we do matters. It's one of the things we can do is try to reduce our own emissions, how we travel, how we power our homes, what we
How we
eat.
eat. Oh, jinx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. And,
Hmm.
and support policies and be vocal. It's time to stop being apathetic. It's time to take action, and it's one little step at a time.
Yeah.
And Angie and I have talked about that for years. It's one
Hmm.
little thing you can do, but then you start building on it. Like I used an example last week where I went to the store to get some milk because Pip was out of milk for her tea and whatnot, and she had a client coming, so she needed some. And I took our car, not our EV, and I got back home and I'm like, why did I take our EV? Which even then, I should have just walked. Like I could have walked to the corner dairy and got some milk. But I
It's
just,
healthier. It's good to move your
so,
body. Yeah. Hmm.
so I'm not perfect either. I'm challenging
No,
myself
no, no.
to put it in my consciousness. The next time that comes up, say, okay, yeah, I'll be gone for an hour. I'm going to go walk, get some
Hmm.
exercise, and I'll be home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That little bit
Hmm.
becomes habit. And then
Yes.
when millions of us are doing that,
Hmm.
it changes the world.
It does. It really, really does. And collectively, it's like that penguin huddle. If we all do it together, we can definitely move the dial. And of course, not everybody can has time or has the ability to do X, Y, or Z. So it's more focusing on what you can do. It works with what you're already doing that are maybe small behavioral shifts, things like that, with it within your reach, because it's not just on one person, right? And I always say too, if you can't do anything because it's just not possible financially for you or with time or whatever, one thing you can do though is vote with your dollar. So how do you spend your money? Who do you support? What type of companies? Look into what they're doing or not doing for the environment. And Chris and I will probably, hopefully, this year get an expert on talking on the podcast about greenwashing and stuff like that. So you do have to be careful that you're when you are voting with your dollar or backing a company and stuff like that, that they actually are making true impacts and real change and doing their best and not just saying words type of deal. So it's something I personally want to explore more of this year so I can become more educated on it and understand uh, how to be more informed as I consume. Because we have to consume things, right? We have to consume food. We have to buy clothes. We have to buy houses, cars, these types of things. But how do we do that better? And how do we do it with the environment in mind? How do we do it thinking about the emperor penguins and the chicks and things like that? And so yeah, I think that there's a little something everybody can do and some people can do more. And that's great too. And so hopefully throughout this podcast and others will give more solutions on how to do more. And then the other thing I think you can do if you can't do anything else and you're just like, ah, is besides voting with your dollar, you can vote at the ballot box. And here in the US, it's always red versus blue and da 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 da. And then they always say like, oh, purple sometimes. And I'm like, you know what? Green. I don't care if it's red. I don't care if it's blue. I don't care if it's purple. It actually really needs to have some green to it and support policies and actions for our planet and our wildlife, which ultimately save an emperor penguin, save ourselves, right? So voting green or for policies that help the earth are actually helping yourself, even though you might think that it's not really moving the needle, it does. And the only way to
Mm.
stand up to kind of bigger, more powerful corporations and people and things like this is collectively with the penguin huddle, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Welcome back. Evolution, done penguins before. I mean, 10,000 plus species of birds. The penguins are sphenociniforms, around 18 species, maybe 22. Still some debate with genetics with that. The genre of the emperor penguin, Actinodites and Antennodites uh, forsteri. Okay, so really, in the genre, there's two species: the kings, which are a little bit smaller than the emperors. Interesting about penguins, they started before the last mass extinction and somehow survived. And what I loved about it, every time we talk about a penguin species, is they originated New Zealand. Yeah.
That's right,
So,
baby. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. Used to be a bigger continent called Zealandia, which most of it's submerged now. But we do know these giant penguins used to live here in New Zealand, and then they radiated out around the southern oceans. I mean, even all the way up to the Galapagos,
Mm-hmm.
near the equator.
Yep.
So all the penguins in the world generally are south of the equator. Sometimes you might get a vagrant that crosses, but very rarely no. Uh, now, uh, Antarctica itself, so looking at emperor penguins specifically, we've talked about it with other species, which I find fascinating. And I can only imagine the fossils there because the marsupials,
Yeah.
evolved in the Americas, walked across Antarctica up into Australia.
Crazy.
And then Australia finally moved a little bit further north because the earth was a lot warmer then. Antarctica started freezing around 34 million years ago. And that's where you get this separation from South America and Australia. Now, over that 34 million years in the freezing, the penguins, modern emperor penguins, emerge about 2 million years ago. So this is when deep freeze, these special adaptations we're going to talk about today, it's taken them a couple million years to hone.
Right.
Yeah.
Their craft, and they're really good at it, but that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's hard to undo it so quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's developing this thick blubber. We're going to talk about their feathers, this countercurrent heat exchange, which we always like to nerd out about. Their ability to dive and find food and stay
Yeah.
underwater. I mean, it's
Yeah, they're
all
the
of these
deepest
things.
diving bird, so we'll talk about that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it just 2 million years to really specialize in it, and then here they are today, and the ice has fallen out beneath their feet. So. One last little fun fact: the giant penguin stood nearly 6 feet tall,
Oh, I
weighed
love it.
175 pounds. So you'd look eye to eye with it with this big beak.
My
Just go,
God, it's
look
amazing.
at it.
I need that in my
Could you?
life right now.
A
I
big
need a
penguin.
hug. I need a hug from one of those.
Yeah. Definitely weighs more than you, but just, oh, that'd
Hmm.
be hilarious to
I
see.
just need to be like
Uh,
the little chick, like on their feet, just like keep me warm. Yeah.
oh, we're getting to facts. Okay. All right. So that's their history. And looking at lifespan, around 15 to 20 years, which is good for a bird. Not the longest living bird, but I mean, it's tough. It's, it's living on the ice and surviving leopard seals and, orcas and other things that might eat them. So really survival is low in those early years and
Yeah.
until they get to adulthood, and
Yeah.
then they have better high survival rates. Swimming speeds pretty quick, upwards of 5.5 miles per hour. They can burst close to 10 miles per hour. That's 15 kilometers per hour. So very, very efficient torpedoes
Yeah.
in the oceans. But on land, as we'd all have seen, they waddle around
And they're
a mile per
darling.
hour,
Yeah.
yeah, or a couple kilometers per hour. But they do tobogganing, which I think Angie will probably talk about in some of the, um, yeah, their behaviors. So I guess it's fun because we've done them before, but to review their anatomy, how do they survive this, Angie? How do they survive minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yeah.
That I would be an icicle. I wouldn't
All
survive.
of it. All of it. Yes. And so they do it several different ways. And like Chris mentioned, they've been perfecting this cold adaptation for 2 million years, right? But they are a bird. And so emperor penguins, they swim, of course, they don't fly, but they do have a very dense layered feathers that basically will trap and insulate air and block wind. So even when they are having these wind chills and these blowing wind in the middle of winter, they can, the feathers act as insulation to help keep them warm. And that's, of course, on the outer layer. But then if we think even bigger, remember they do that huddling behavior. So the huddling in large groups especially during windstorms and things like that, or snowstorms, that basically helps keep them more insulated from the wind hitting them. And they'll also, when it's extreme cold, the emperor penguins will rotate positions. So you can take turns being on the outer ring of the huddle and taking the hardest hit versus then being on the inside where it's going to be warmer. So really smart behavioral adaptations from the outside. And then, yes, and then they have their layered feathers, which insulates the air and helps block the wind. And then Chris alluded to it a little bit, but they have a thick body fat that helps act like a built-in winter coat, basically. And so that's probably like the next layer. And then when we think of heat loss, right, like us humans, we lose heat all over because of our skin. But the first thing your mom tells you to do is to put on your hat, right? So you lose less heat from your head, and put on your socks. So you lose less heat from your feet. Well, the emperor penguins compensate from losing body heat that they've generated by having small bills and small flippers, which can reduce the surface area so they lose less heat. So they just make themselves small, and less heat will leave that area. They also have nasal passages that recover heat from exhaled air, right? So they breathe in air. It's going to be cold. What'd you say?
Mm-hmm.
Minus
Mm-hmm.
60 or
60.
something? Crazy.
Oh,
So
burn.
that's ouchies. But then when, of course, once it gets into their lungs, it is going to gain heat from their body, from their blood, and then they exhale out carbon dioxide. And so this exhaled air, they try to keep some of the heat in so less warmth escapes as they breathe out. And then when we think of emperor penguin and we think of the march of the emperor penguin, which is miles in their journey during the breeding season, we'll talk about that. But I always think about their feet, like how
Mm-hmm.
do their feet not freeze, right? Like I grew up in Michigan. I did a lot of horse chores in Michigan and some very, very cold winter. And then I moved to Chicago where I was a zookeeper and I took care of many cold tolerant animals out and had to work out in the cold a lot. And I could never keep my feet warm. And I had on a couple pairs of socks, little toe things to make my like heat pads, heater things to make my toes warm, and then boots, waterproof boots. Still, my toes are cold. How do these penguins march across with their cute little penguin feet? Well, they have special fats that also help keep their feet from basically, and their tissue, if you will, from like freezing on the ice. So there's extra padding there. And then Chris talked about it, but in their feet and in their flippers, they have a mechanism called counter current heat exchange. And what that is in the emperor penguins is basically the arteries. Remember, those carry blood away. I always think A from artery, A away from the heart. So it's all has oxygen in it and it's been warmed up. So the arteries carrying the warm blood from the body run very close to the veins in the feet and the flippers. And they're kind of all networked together. And they basically run really close to the veins that, of course, have colder blood because they're like touching the snow or whatever. And this heat transfers from the outgoing blood to the returning blood before it reaches the extremities. So this exchange of heat in the blood vessels is a huge mechanisms that help their poor little feet out and their flippers.
Mhm.
So
Well, yeah, what I
yeah.
loved, the only to add to all that, that was awesome, is the layers of feathers, which I found really interesting, is they have an outer layer of contour feathers, right? So it's like shingles on the house. That's the waterproof barrier, blocks the wind, like you talked about. Then they have the inner contour layer, which is densely packed under that outer layer. So that's protecting and then trapping air. Oh, Angie, I don't know if you've ever had a wetsuit on,
Yes.
diving or whatever. And when you
Mhm.
put on a wetsuit and you let some of that cold water in, and it's like, ooh, until it warms up
It seems
because it's,
horrible for the first like 5 seconds, but then you're
yes.
very grateful
Yeah, like
afterwards.
say in Michigan, right? The Lake Michigan or something, that your body temperature warms that layer of water with the wetsuit, and then that keeps you warm. Well, there's a thing called a dry suit. I don't know if you've ever worn one.
I have not. My friend Narina
Okay.
wears one, and I'm
Yeah.
really I want to go dive with her and try one out.
Yes. So when I used to mine gold with my dad, I've said this before, and growing up, we had wetsuits and dry suits. And when it was really cold, some of these waters coming off glaciers that we would dive in, we'd wear dry suits. So there's no water in there. It's just dry and it's warmer. So the penguins basically have dry suits on. And so again, when I think of climate change getting too hot, like they'll overheat, but it is very interesting. Their anatomy is evolved to protect them. Then you have that layer of blubber, then all the other things that you talked about. So yeah, that's how they survive it. That's how they do it. And then when you look at some of their other superpowers, one thing we forget with penguins, unlike most birds, their bones are more dense and
Right.
solid,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they need that to swim.
Yeah.
Where other birds that fly, they have hollow bones that makes them lighter. They're able to fly easier. Penguins, their bones are more dense, so they can sink and dive deeper with superpowers of the emperor penguin going upwards of 500 meters. That's 1,600 feet for 20
Yeah.
minutes.
Right.
Yeah. So,
That is
how
one of
did
their
they do
super
that? Yeah.
strengths. Yeah. I mean, they're
Mhm.
the deepest diving bird. I don't know why that fact it really shocked me for some reason. And I'm sure I'd come across it before, but yeah. And then how long they can stay under, and it makes sense because they're specialized hunters and they've got a lot of work to do. But it's just incredible adaptations. I mean, they're staying warm when they're out in the middle of the winter in these harsh storms when they're raising their chicks on land, and then whoop, they could just go in the water and dive that deep. It's
Yeah.
incredible. It's
That's
really
160 stories. That's a very, very tall building. I don't think I've seen one of those
I
ever. I don't know if there is one ever.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, going back
It's deep.
to New York. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's really deep.
it's impressive.
But like whales, deep diving seals, they have a lot of myoglobin, hemoglobin, so a lot of blood volume to store oxygen. They do slow their heart rates dramatically during dives. So like the whales and stuff that can go really, really deep. And obviously that's when they're looking for food like krill, fish, squid. Um, and that's going to change on season and stuff. But krill's the big one. That's why it's like such uh, a concern of mine with us now pulling krill out of the ocean.
Right.
And just how they digest it quickly. Like other birds, they have a gizzard, this muscular stomach. They swallow their prey whole. The acid enzymes break down the feed, but their diets are really high in protein, high in fat, help build that layer of blubber. And again, the males get really, really chunky.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Then they're able to live off that fat storage, while the females, which Angie will talk about, I don't want to get too much, but it takes so much energy and out of her to produce that egg. So like the cassowary, she just takes off. See ya. She does come back, right?
She
But
comes back. She's got to get some
okay,
food though, right? Like, I
yes, she
mean,
needs to go replenish or she'll die. Like,
yeah,
so she
yeah.
lays the egg, and then the males come in, which we'll get to here in a second. And then the males starve for months while she's out replenishing her reserves. Then she comes back, and then he gets to go back and replenish. And then their babies are hopefully, thriving. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, behavior. This is the cream of the podcast. I think what these birds do give you some idea how they survive, but leading up to these behaviors, Angie. I mean, it is extreme. It's incredible, this animal, and it really makes you appreciate the natural world.
Oh, it so does. I mean, like I said, they're doing the extremes. They're doing the cold chick rearing in the winter on land, and then they're swimming and spending a lot of energy foraging, doing these deep dives. But they have to be successful at it in order to build up the blubber to basically either be creating an egg or be taking care of a chick or recovering from having an egg. I mean, it's just yeah, it's incredible. And so I think just to let me get on my right slide. And I think to tie all of that together is with emperor penguins, the success that they have foraging basically directly affects their body condition. And then that directly affects their whether or not they have a chick, and then that chick's growth, and then their breeding success. And so a lot really is riding on the health of the oceans, which they hunt in. And they do use a lot of energy when they're hunting. And so it's really important. And a lot of their hunting, I of course always have interest in, especially because it is so deep. And so I'm wondering whether I was curious about their senses. And for the emperor penguin, the vision is their best studied sense because they think about this. They see really well both on land, on the ice, and
Hmm.
underwater. So their eyes have to be adapted for basically amphibious vision and in changing light conditions. So I think like, for me, it's just so impressive because if I go underwater and open my eyes, I don't see much.
Hmm.
I put goggles on, I can see better, right? But then if it's dark, I have actually snorkeled at nighttime in Hawaii to see the manta rays, and you can't see anything. I can't see anything, right? Because it's dark. And of course,
Yes.
they shine light, and then I can start to see stuff. So I'm just in awe. I mean, of how the emperor penguin can do all of this in the light, in the dark, on land, in the water. It's incredible.
Mm.
And they do this because they can actually see better in lower light than what we can. So that helps them function in the water and, of course, in the Antarctic winter. And then I think the other super sense of the emperor penguin is just their ability to support navigation and ability to go out to sea and their ability to go out to sea and do all this foraging for months at a time, potentially, depending on where they're at in their life cycle, and then know where to come back and where to find their mate and where to find their chick. And it's incredible. And scientists are still trying to understand how all of that works, and uh, as far as understanding the ecological cues from the ice, and then of course some of the maybe sensory cues, whether it's smell, vision, vocal, from the colony. And those are things to be concerned about if the ice pack is changing so dramatically and
Yeah.
quickly. The ones that are out to sea are not going to know where to come back, right? Potentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's just, yeah. And there's still, yeah, we don't have it. We don't know how they do all of it. There's definitely some mystery there still. And I just would hate to see for them to go extinct just, before we understand all of their incredible powers, right? Uh, One of the
Mm-hmm.
behaviors that really just always is fascinating, and one of the other behaviors that's been so fascinating to me is in lines to knowing where their chick is in this big colony and where their mate is, and how do we, I mean, first of all, how do we find our colony to begin with? And then in the colony, how do they know where their chick is? And so emperor penguins do make several vocal communications, and they have contact calls that, of course, helps them recognize their mate, their chick, because the colony is very noisy. So they have to have
Mm-hmm.
some of these identifiers. And there's been studies to show that there is parent chick recognition calls. So in this loud, squawking flock, uh, chicks and parents can use unique vocal signatures so that they can find each other after long absences. While one of the parents is out foraging or the other one, they out of all of that noise, they can pick up on which one is their chick.
Just jump in real quick. It's insane. It's
Right?
insane. I think Secrets of the Penguins, they talked about this a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but it made me remember when I was getting dropped off at college when I was 18, and my parents, and so there's all these students, and I still remember it to this day. And I said, "Mom," and I literally had 20 women like face me because all these moms.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I said, "Mom." So imagine the penguin going, "Mom, mom, mom." It's just, but they're able to hone in on that voice.
So another
It's
superpower that's been perfected
yeah,
over
yeah,
a millennia. I mean, it's
mhm,
just
yeah.
incredible. And so so their communication, I mean, they have display calls used during courtship and pair bonding. So that's going to be between the two mates. They have threat calls when they are social bird living in this colony. So, don't get too close to my chick, or don't get too close to me, or get closer. So they have to have all these different calls. And they have long distance calls that can carry over great distances, which is important because if it's like snowy and windy or something, the visibility, anybody who lives up north and has been in a blizzard knows the visibility can be really bad. So vocalizations can be sometimes the only way that you can communicate. And then they also have what's known as like a two voice vocalization, which means they can produce calls with both sides of their vocal organ.
Mm.
And that basically can help make their calls individually distinct. That basically parents can learn of their chicks and chicks can learn of their parents, because chicks will produce calls, of course, that attract their parents. And basically, as Chris said, mom, mom, I'm hungry. I think with an emperor chick, it's more, I'm hungry, hello.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So just another incredible superpower, I think, when it comes to behavior. Uh, it's I have no idea how they do it. And I just, I mean, I just still cracking up thinking of you saying mom, and that's so me. I'm like, what? Who needs a mom? Like over here.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but the other thing too about them living in this big colony is that in general they're pretty peaceful. Like the emperor penguins don't show a lot of territorial aggression compared with what we see in some other birds. So it's a very cooperative colony based lifestyle, which helps them survive, right, with this really in this really cold weather. And not only survive, but then they can do this huddling behavior, which helps keep them warm when the weather is really, really cold.
So we talked a little bit about laying the egg and mom leaving, and then dad taking over for a few months during the winter, mom coming back. So what's this like? Expand upon that, like the life cycle of the emperor
Yeah, yeah. We
penguin.
should have opened with a life cycle, but it basically rearing a chick, which is the goal of every parent, or reproduction is the goal of every organism, right? So in emperor penguins, the chick rearing takes more than 8 months. And so what ends up happening is the emperor penguins, they'll be out to sea hunting, foraging, fattening up, especially if you're a male, doing your thing. But the emperor penguins return to their breeding colonies from March to December as winter is starting to approach. They can travel up to 125 miles to reach their nesting sites on the sea ice or fast ice, so just depending on what type of ice or land they're on. And that's where that movie March of the Penguin talks about how they get from the ocean to where they're going to go breed and then rear their chick. And 125 miles on land for an emperor penguin is a sight to behold when it comes to waddling, right?
Yes.
Like they're not the fastest land walkers. And
Mm-mm.
as Chris mentioned, sometimes they'll slide on their bellies and stuff like that to help move it along, depending on how the landscape is and when they need to catch up with somebody else that they're following or depending on the weather. But yes, it can take a while. So when they get there, male and female will display some they'll display some courtship behaviors and basically pick each other. So emperor penguins are serially monogamous during the breeding season, which means one mate for that season, all in 100%. But that's not completely monogamous, where next spring season, they might pick a different mate. So during this courtship, and this is in the Antarctic autumn, the adults travel to this breeding colonies and the male gets there first. And once the female arrives, he'll start using a lot of display behaviors. So that's will include bowing, lots of head movements, showing off their flippers, and making distinct romantic courtship calls to help basically reunite with the right female. And so they're making calls and they're moving their bodies and they're looking real handsome. And if the female is receptive to that male, she will also stand closer to him. She'll mirror his movements. She'll face him. And now they're kind of starting to pair bond. And once that happens, they will couple together and breed. And the couple will work together as a team through basically egg laying and incubation. And when we see courtship with the emperor penguins, it's really this communication, recognition, and basically cooperation. Like, hey, I'm going to spend this long winter with you raising
Mm.
a single chick, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
then the female, after breeding, she'll lay just one egg sometime between May and June. And then, as Chris mentioned, she did a lot and expended a lot of energy to produce this egg. And she pieces out back to the ocean. The male must take care of the egg for anywhere from 62 to 67 days. And he does this by incubating or brooding the egg on his feet under a fat brood pouch. And he just hangs out there. And he's doing this through the winter with extreme cold and extreme wind
Mm-hmm.
chill and a lot of darkness. And he's hanging out. He's huddling, yes, and he's keeping that not moving from that egg, keeping it warm. And during this time, no food. He's fasting. He's just hanging out. It's about a 115-day fast for him from the time he hulls out, gets with the female, they breed, egg is laid, egg hatches. Now, what's interesting and something to keep in mind, I did read a fact that in the huddle, the center of the huddle, remember they kind of rotate in the extreme
Mm-hmm.
cold
Mm-hmm.
to stay warm. It can reach about 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's warm. Okay. So yeah.
So, and then of course they have to rotate in and out. They don't get to stay that warm the whole time. But yeah, they're able to do this dense huddling, and it helps them thermoregulate and helps the egg hopefully hatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the egg will hatch about the time that the female comes back from the water. And so she returns from the sea, does the march back to the rearing location or the nesting colony about mid-July. And once again, usually there may be an egg there. There may be a chick there. It just depends. If there is a chick there, it usually was just freshly hatched. But then she nods to her emperor penguin boyfriend, like, okay, now you go.
Mm-hmm.
And she relieves him. He's been fasting for 115 days. I can't even do a
Mm-hmm.
12-hour fast. I've tried.
He's
Try.
hungry.
I know it's healthy and all intermittent fasting and all this and that, but so yes, dad of the year, Emperor Penguin,
Mm-hmm.
he is killing it. I mean,
Yep.
incredible. And so yeah, and then basically, so once chicks hatched, females come back and kind of finally like re-nourish herself, and then they
Mm-hmm.
basically alternate going out to sea and foraging, and then taking care of the egg or the chick, but usually the chick. And of course, when they feed their chick, they have to collect food from the sea, bring it back, and then feed it to their chick through a regurgitation in the beginning. And it is a full-time job. These are
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
harsh conditions, and the chick is super cute and pretty helpless when it's born. And it does get bigger and fluffier and starts being able to thermoregulate more by itself and stand on its own, stand with all the other chicks and hang out. Sometimes both parents will go out to sea and then come back. But it needs a lot of food, and the parental investment is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh and they'll basically continue feeding the chick, helping the chick for months at a time. And as the emperor chick grows and gets a little more independent, usually around day 50 to 60, the chicks once again they'll hang out together more. They're called creches. They hang out together for warmth. At this time, both parents can maybe be foraging at the same time because chick is growing fast. And by the time they're ready to fledge, they're almost as large as the adults. So the parents have been feeding this chick to get big and get big quick so it can survive to the next season. And of course, as they grow, they develop their juvenile feathers and then gradually become independent and start looking more like their parents. And then the emperor penguin chick that's gotten pretty big at this point in time will fledge around 150 days old from hatching.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. And then the other thing I think is really important to know when we talk about the fact that emperor penguins are endangered now is that they don't usually become reproductively mature until they're somewhere between 4 and 6 years old. So, Chris was talking about predators and their life cycle and how a lot of them, they're lucky if they make it to adulthood, and then they're even luckier. A smaller
Mm-hmm.
number of them actually make it to become
Yeah.
reproductively active in this 4 to 6 year window. And then when they are reproductively active, well, they're only producing one chick a year, more or
Yeah.
less. So they're not, they won't be a species that even if everything was perfect and all the stars aligned and climate change stopped and everything was perfect,
Mm.
they still wouldn't bounce back quickly
No.
because
No.
of their life cycle and all of this work going in to create a chick in these harsh climates. And so every chick that is
Mm.
hatched is important,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to
Yeah. I mean,
survive at this point. At this point in the game, it
yeah.
needs to
Yeah.
survive not only
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
adulthood but to reproduce.
Yeah. I mean, they've lost whole generations.
Correct.
Certain colonies in
Yeah.
Antarctica, a generation is gone, like gone, erased from history, because the ice collapsed under them. And when we look at overall populations, I mean, right now, the best estimates are about 250,000. So 250,000 breeding pairs of emperor penguins. That's 500,000 birds. But remember, I mean, this is 25 million square kilometers, up to 10 million square miles of their range. So 500,000 birds sounds like, oh, that's plenty. Not so much in that large of a territory or
Right.
range, because they're
Right.
circumpolar, right? They all around Antarctica.
Yeah.
So right now, uh, under strong climate action, like if we could switch the changes today, the Paris Accords or the climate action that's been proposed, that even New Zealand's looking to roll back. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Come on, New Zealand.
I know.
You're
We're
our
like the green
shining
country.
star. All
Well,
right. Yeah.
we do have an election coming up, so that earlier thing about voting green. So I think we're going to see a big change here. People aren't happy. But look at this. If we do strong climate action today, we still are projected to anywhere from 30 to 50% decrease in population. That's still projected because the damage has been done to the climate. We have to slow it is basically what we need to do today, and then reverse it. So that means we're down to 250,000 total birds, 125,000 breeding pairs. If there's no our current trajectory, no change, populations could get as low as 50,000 emperor penguins. So that's maybe a couple colonies. That's it. Completely surrounding Antarctica, circumpolar to a couple colonies breeding that are barely hanging on. And then if you have throw bird flu in the mix or some disease, you're looking at we could see this animal go extinct. Like that's how alarming this is. This isn't, again, oh, sad story, let's move on in our life. It's a story that you slam on the brakes and go, enough's enough. Enough's enough. And it's time to take the narrative and seek solutions.
Right.
So.
Right. Because because people have been sounding the alarm bells since 2019 when they were near threatened. People have been maybe not full on alarm bells before that, but yes, I mean, you and I have pretty much since we started this podcast back in 2017. Yep. So it's things like this are definitely frustrating, but it's just a sign that we have to work harder and make our voices louder and vote more with our dollar and vote more green and be more proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so there are organizations out there fighting hard.
We are not.
Especially emperor penguins.
Yeah. Chris and I are not alone with our love for emperor penguins. So the organizations I want to give a shout out to, there's Global Penguin Society and Penguins International. But probably I think the one with the strongest conservation that I want to promote this week for the emperor penguin is the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition. This is the ASOC because they're really specifically focused on the emperor penguin protection, and they work hard on Antarctic policy using science-based conservation. So a really good group. They can be Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition can be found at www.asoc.org. And some of their key achievements have been to basically help advance the specially protected species effort. So that's designed for the emperor penguin to help protect them in the Antarctic through a treaty system. And they push for more action plans, right? So they advocate not only to basically help protect the emperor penguin, but then also reduce threats throughout their whole life cycle and everywhere they live. So or everywhere they travel. So that's a big thing to bite off, right? And then, as Chris, we talk about krilling and krill trawling. The ASOC helps promote protected marine areas. And so these MPAs are areas of the Southern Ocean where they're more protective and fishing, I believe, is regulated and or not allowed. And so, of course, that's a great way to help the emperor penguin with their food source. So, yeah, they really are working, obviously, on saving the current emperor penguins and the environments that they live in. So, check them out, give them a follow on social media. And yes, and like I said, too, the Global Penguin Society has a lot of good educational content, and Penguin International is also very, very well known.
Yeah. Well, great job today, Angie. I mean, this is just another highlight. I know we have a species coming up that's more hopeful. It's a
we're going to tell all the stories. Yes, exactly.
There is a lot of good conservation ongoing in the world. There is a lot of very positive stories. Green sea turtles, we talked about. Conservation works. So it's not doom and gloom. Oh, the world's over. It's wow, this is happening in real time and it's time to act.
And I think that
2026 is a
obviously
pivotal
at
year.
both of our polls, we're going to see a lot more conservation issues faster because of what's happening to those climates in real time. But we want to bring you those stories
Yeah,
and solutions as well as the species we have coming next week. That there's a lot of action has taken place, and they've had really great results.
success. Yeah, yeah. So stay tuned for all of that. And thanks for listening and take care.
Thank you, everyone, for caring and sharing.